Hey everyone, Jay here, and welcome to another Python lab. This time, lab 6, we're going to be manipulating strings a little bit and combining those strings with variables so that we can make human readable output with our program. Okay, so we've manipulated numbers a little bit. We've manipulated numbers before we output them in one or two different ways. But if we're going to output things to humans that humans can read, we're going to need to be able to put our variables into some text. All right. And Python offers us a few different ways to write that. Okay. And so what we've got here is our assignment where, of course, we're going to have our standard header at the top. We're going to create a couple of values. We're going to create a string that says hello world. And then we're going to create a number value with a decimal, 0.12345. That's fun. And then we're going to output the hello world value with a coded string in there too. So the output is going to literally say the value of our variable is, and then we're going to add the value of our variable all in one line. Okay. Uh, don't forget to have a period at the end of your sentence. Right? Then we're going to output uh, those digits, and we're going to format it so that we output a certain number of digits every time, as if we're doing some sort of a countdown. So it's going to say 0.12345, and then it's going to say 0.1234, 0.123, 0.12, 0.1, and finally 0. Okay. And then we're going to output a combination of the two and say the value of our variable, hello world, the countdown is 0.12345 and all the way down. You'll see there's an issue because we're going to have that rounding problem when we go from 4 to 5. You can fix it any number of ways you want. For this assignment, you don't have to fix it. Don't worry about that. Okay, let's have a look at the code. I've got it all written up for you already. As soon as I can find my mouse. Okay, so here's our code. Got my standard header at the top, and my example is separate from the actual code that I want you to do because I'm going to give you a little more information than what you need. Okay, so declare our variables. We have var hw is equal to the text hello world. Var countdown is that 0.12345, and these are what we're not going to change the values of these. We're just going to use them to output differently. So the first thing that we want to do is we're going to output the value of our HW is and have that in there. And so Python gives us at least 6 different ways of outputting that same thing. Okay. Uh, you pick whichever one you like. Do this one time. I've given you 6 different ways to do it. Okay. Some of them don't actually work. Actually, let's do that. All right, let's run this, just these 6 lines, and show you what you get. Okay, we'll have a look at the output, and then we'll come back. One of these doesn't work right. Okay, here we go. So these are those 6 different ways, and you'll see one of them right here. There's an incorrect spacing where the period is. So that one could be good in some cases, but it's not good in this case because I can't get this to output without that space there on that first one. But for the remainder of them, they do work fine. So let's have a look at what they are, and then we'll see the output again in a little bit. All right. So here are these first 6 outputs we're going to look at. They're all print statements. Okay, and they all pretty much start with this text, the value of var HW is, but then the Python print statement allows us to do things in various different ways depending on what we want to do. So if you remember our previous lab, I was printing data types and their values, and I used a comma to separate the outputs. Okay, so this is basically a variable. It's a string literal variable. Okay, so I'm printing here's a variable, comma, here's a variable, comma, here's a variable, and I'm printing all those. And these spaces right here, those don't get printed. That's just for you and me to read. The computer ignores those. So if you were thinking, well, there's your space right there, it is not. What happens is when you print this way, Python is going to put a space in between each of the variables on its own. Okay, so if you want to put a space in between all the variables and you just have a lot of variables to print, that's the easiest way to do it. You just put each thing in as if it's a variable, put a comma in between them, and off you go. But we don't want to do that. That one didn't work. All right, so the next one is I'm putting this and I'm concatenating all these things into one large string first before the print actually prints, okay? And the difference is I have this first string, and then I'm using the plus that is going to concatenate or put it together with the next string, okay? Now, luckily, this variable is a string, because if it was a number, I may or may not have been able to concatenate. We'll find out later when we try to concatenate numbers. It will concatenate that string, and then it will another plus, and it will concatenate the period at the end. Don't forget to add that period at the end, all right? It's a sentence. It's human readable, right? So this one works great. What you have to remember, though, is if you want a space after the is and before the hello world, you got to put your own space in there, and you got to add that into your quotes, right? Pretty much all of these have that same thing. If you want a space in there, you got to put a space in there. Computers are great, but they don't think on their own yet. If you want them to do something, you got to tell them exactly 100% of the steps to do it. They won't figure it out unless you do. Right? So this is a classic, probably my favorite. It's the easiest, most straightforward way of just putting strings together. Okay. Next is the exact same thing, except I'm casting this variable as a string, str, with the parentheses. I'm saying, make this thing a string and then do this, because, as I mentioned, if this is a number and you try to concatenate it, you're going to have a problem. Python's not going to like it. And, oh, something's happened with my program here. There we go. It's a little wait button. It's not going to like that very much. So we cast it, and then in the event that var HW is ever not a string for any reason, this will cast it as a string first, and then everything will work fine. Next one, this one's a little bit newer. We're using this F in front, which is Python print command for format this string, and then you put the curly braces, and it will format what's in the curly brace. So if I put the variable in the curly brace, it will take that variable, get the value of that variable, okay? Not just the name of the variable, because if I do this wrong, I'll just print varhw, right? Like I did right here. This says varhw, but it's going to print the actual literal text var underscore hw. It's not going to print the value. Putting it in these curly braces tells Python that you want the value and not just the word. Okay, so this one's pretty cool, and you can do multiple. You don't need to just do one variable if you wanted to. You can do as many as you can fit in that string. Same with all of these, really. So that's pretty cool. Next one is very similar. I've got the value of RHW is, and then a placeholder with curly braces, and then a dot format gives the variable here, and it will plug it in there. This one's pretty nice. I like this one because it's really just the same as this one, although a little bit some of you might find it easier to read one or the other. And then in this one, I did a concatenate and I put the period at the end. I could very easily have put the period right in here, but I wanted to show you that you can indeed continue on the process and concatenate and put more things at the end. Okay, but you could absolutely just put the period right here. Just wanted to show you that you could do it. And then the last one that I have here, this is by, there could be other ways to do this, okay? I've got 6 for you. This is the last one that I have for you. I have my string, the value of varchw is, and then a key right here, %s, saying, hey, there's going to be a string coming up here, and then a % function call, right, with varhw, and hopefully that's a string, and it's going to plug it into wherever the % string is. You can do this with digits, %d, and other values. This one is the hardest of them because you have to remember those % keys, and you have to put things in their right place and everything. The format one I also like because you can put a number in the parentheses and you can reorder your variables in a different order if you wanted to. So that's pretty cool. So that's why I like the format. But these are these 6 ones. Let's have a look at what they outputted again, right? So this is what they output. They were all very good except for that first one. We went a little too simple and we were not able to get rid of that extra 1 single space right there. All right, so that was 6 different ways. You only have to pick one if you're doing the assignment. For me, if you're just watching the video for fun, thanks for watching. All right, next we're going to do this countdown, and you can use whatever formatting you wanted in order to get the countdown. I'm going with the dot format because I like it and because I know how to tell the dot format to round for me. All right, so I have the first one. The countdown is countdown, right? I don't need to format that one because it's the full 0.12345. So the first one I don't need to format, but I have a little commented outline of what it would look like if I did. I'm going to skip it and go to the next one. The next one I have my print command. The countdown is, and I have these curly braces again that says there's going to be something in there, right? And I'm formatting the dot format. You need this dot, okay? When the dot at the end of something says that we're going to call a function with this thing in mind, okay? We'll be using this a lot. You'll see it. All right, this is not the last time you'll see that. So I have the dot format, and it's going to take the value of the var countdown and plug it into the curly braces from within the string, but the curly braces have something in there. All right, they have a colon dot for f. So I'm telling it to give me whatever's in front of the dot, but then only give me 4 digits after the period, okay? And then it's going to give me 4 of my 5, and then the next line I'm only going to get 3 digits after the decimal point, and then 2 digits after the decimal point, and then 1 digit after the decimal point, and then 0 digits after the decimal point, okay? So these formats are a little bit tricky, and by no means do you have to use them. You could do the rounding from our previous lab where I showed you rounding, and you could just use any one of these other options for putting a variable into your string, and you could just round that variable. And if you did, it would look something like let's do this one. Let's do format, and we'll do round. We can put functions inside of functions. Did you know that? And 2. Okay, we'll see that run in a moment. Well, let's run it. All right, and get you the output screen. Here you go. So this is what we're looking at right now. This is what ran. So the first line, we output the countdown with no kind of formatting, 0.12345. The next line, we told it to format to 4 decimal places, 0.135. Kind of funny because, remember rounding, right? Next one is 3 decimal places, then 2 decimal places. That's the one where I told it to round the other way without using the cool formatting. Instead, I just did the round function. That one's very cool. And then the 0 at the end. Let's get back to our code. I got a couple of ways to talk about that with the rounding error. But let's look at this last part here, right here. All right, I'm calling this section the final countdown, or I'm going to do the countdown again, but this time I'm going to put the variable hello world in front. So I'm going to say hello world, the countdown is whatever the value of the countdown is. And I'm going to do the countdown then. Oh. But I forgot to do 0 on my countdown. So I'm going to round the countdown to 0 decimal places in the end. Okay. And that one's going to do that. And that's fine. We saw the output very briefly. Let's have another better look at that. All right. That is all this output right here. So we've outputted the hello world. We did a comma. The countdown is, we did a colon, and then we did our countdown. We still have that issue with the 4 though. And over here we have the issue with the extra space again, just like before. In my example, I'm giving you multiple options. When you do your assignment, pick your favorite method of formatting that you are comfortable with. Try them all out, but then just pick your favorite one and do everything your favorite way. I want you to get as much practice of one as you can. All right, let's have a look at this code. So previously I had, hey, what about that 4? What if we did some math to figure out that 4? What if we did something better than that? No, that's going to be the way to do it, right? So well, this math is a little bit more complicated, but remember I mentioned some math before, so here's one thing we can do. We can use some factoring. It's the 4th decimal point, right? So we're going to use some powers of 10 and some multiplying and dividing. What if we did let's see, is this on my screen? Can you see this? There we go. Print. What if we multiplied our decimal point? We want 4 digits, so we're going to multiply by 10, 100, 1,000 by 10,000. And then we're going to turn it into an integer. And then we're going to divide by 10,000. What if we did that? So I'm going to say, what's my variable name? Var countdown times 10,000, right? I'm going to cast that as an integer. Okay, so it's going to, there's some ordering going on right here, right? So the way this works is it does everything inside the parentheses first, just like you should do in math, right? Programming is very similar. It's going to take this countdown, multiply it by 10,000. Yeah, that's 4 decimal places. And then it's going to turn it into an integer. And just like we saw in our previous lab, when you turn a float into an integer, you just cut off all the decimal points and you get rid of them, and there's no rounding. I like that for this purpose, no rounding, okay? Then after that, I need to divide by 10,000 and, whoops, and whoop, type the right key, it'll work better. And there we go. So this, both of these things are going to print one after the other at the very end. I'm going to run that, and uh-oh, I got an error. One moment while I fix it. Okay, I got an error from this line because I forgot to put that 0 in there. There we go. And the reason for that is I'm numbering both of these arguments right here, both of these formattings, and I want to put them out of order on purpose to display to you that you can put them in whatever order you want as long as you number them, right? So I ran my code, part we're looking at right here also, but all the rest of it as well. Let's have a look at the output. Okay, both of those cool rounding or anti-rounding things worked. Obviously, the simple one, the second one, is better because it is simpler and because it's it's actually almost exactly the same. But for the second one, we did not have to import the math library, so that's nice. So for your purposes, don't do the one with the powers and the factors. Just do the, well, don't do any of them because that's extra for this assignment. All right, so let's have another look at the code and we'll finalize this assignment. Okay, this is the clean version down here. Okay, clean code. If you can see all of it, can you? You cannot see all of it. There you go. That's the clean code. You're going to have your variable hello world and your countdown. You're going to output the hello world with some text one time, not 6 times. Then you're going to do the countdown using your favorite formatting method, whichever you choose. And then you're going to do the final countdown, which combines the two things at the end. All right, so that's what I want you to do. And let's get rid of that complicated 4, right? About that 4. If you want to try and include that 4 properly in the countdown, all right, this is my recommended way of doing it, the simpler way. We don't need to worry about importing math like I had last semester. All right, and if you want to have a look at any of these other ways of formatting output, just pause the video right here and copy that down. All right. In the meantime, that's it for this lab. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.